Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Yud Beis, starting a new simon today. Someone who needs the bathroom, how should he be mekaneach himself? So the Hagdama to this is the Baruch Hashem, we're living in the 21st century, and there are pros and cons about that. One of the pros is that our bathroom setup and our plumbing system and how we go to the bathroom in terms of wiping ourselves, cleaning ourselves afterwards, is a million miles away from what was in the times of Chazal. So what we're going to be talking about in this simon in the beginning is putting aside stones to be mekaneach, to wipe yourself after you go to the bathroom. That's how they would do it in those days. And in terms of Shabbos, that's going to create a problem because stones ordinarily are muktzah. So therefore, you have to designate stones for this on Shabbos. So that's really going to be the theme of this morning's learning. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Mishum Kovod Habrius Hitzir L'Taltal Avonim L'Kanech. Because of Kovod Habrius, Muktzah was sort of put aside, as it were, and you're allowed to take stones to be mekanech, to wipe yourself after you go to the bathroom. V'afilu laha'aloisem legag ima, even to take them up to the roof, that's where you may go to the bathroom. To have a tirchia seira, and therefore schlepping stones up to the roof is considered ordinarily a tircha. Here, muta, it would be allowed. And if someone has got a designated place for a bathroom, you can take a handful of stones with you to the bathroom. Then you can take the amount of a buchna katana. Buchna is like a pestle and mortar, right? The pestle is the sort of the spoon-like implement that you crush the spices, and the buchna is the bowl where you put the spices in. So you take a small bowl of stones. Let's do the Mishnah Berurah till there. Sivkot Aleph Avonim. Fuadin sroros, so too straw, a shad dova ki agavna de lav bar tiltulhu. These sort of things that you can take to wipe yourself. Mokum miyuchad. Pirush, Shamakum Kavua lebeis hakisei. You've got a designated place for the bathroom. To kimin shekavua lelichnes sham tomid. Since you often, that's the place where you go. Imkein afilu im yishtayu la'avonim arvis yuchel lekanech b'hem shachris. If there are leftover stones from the evening, you can use them in the morning to for the bathroom. Al kein hitiru le. And therefore you can bring a handful in. If you've got stuff left over, then so be it. It's not because you'll use them the next time. Even though it's not only exclusively used by you, and other people might use these stones to wipe, less lonba, that's not a problem. You can take the stones for you, or you can take them for other people. And it could be that you also need to go to the bathroom again, so maybe you will be benefiting from it, and that's why it's mutar. That he hasn't got a fixed place. Sometimes go here, sometimes go there. And therefore, if you go to different places each time you shouldn't take more than you need for that occasion. Which is the shear of a buchna katana, this small mortar, the small bowl used for crushing spices. That's the amount. Because if you take more than that, then you're taking too unnecessarily. The cost of a Magen Avram, b'shem hapoiskim, to hold the matir beis hakisei kavua, that which we allow you to take into a fixed beis hakisei, lahachne sham avon b'Shabbos, hanu davka b'sheinem yuchel la'atzmai, el lichnosen gam acherim sham, that other people will also may use it. The loher lehachim erev Shabbos, that you didn't need to prepare these stones on erev Shabbos. The chashash shema yitlu acherim, because we're chayshish that other people might take them. Over prat imhu a beis hakisei shebesada, and certainly if we're talking about he's in a beis hakisei in the field, the tirchu la'achim erev Shabbos, it's a tircha to start preparing there to rechaikehi, because it's quite far away. Avalim hoya samach lebeisai gam miyuchel la'atzim, but if it's closer to home and it's miyuchad for him, that it's your personal bathroom, we don't allow you to bring in the you need to have prepared before Shabbos. However, Chodas halavush. However, the Eli Rabba is makel like the view of the Lavush in all of this. V'atam mishum de lo masik enesh adaite lahochin sham avon erev Shabbos. That the person sometimes doesn't think about it to prepare an erev Shabbos, and therefore, even if he doesn't, we allow him to take the stones to use. Okay, how much do we allow him to take? So we said Maloi Hayad. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Gimel Va'afilu Arba v'Chamesh Avonim, even 4 or 5 stones. And then in Sifkat and Dalet, Vim Ein Le Mokum Kavua, then we can take Kashir Buchna Katana. Berif Barash is a Kashir Reish Buchna Katana Shedochin Boyes HaBoisem V'chein Mashma Batur, where you pound some spices and some fragrant spices and things like that. Okay, let's go back to the Mechaber. 1, 2, 3 lines down. V'imhu nikar bo'even shekinchu bay. So again, if you've used, this stone has been used, it seems you would reuse the stones. They'd be washed, they'd be reused. So if it was clear that this had been used for this purpose, mutalach nisa afilu gadol harbe, because they're no longer muktzah, because these things have been used have been designated for this purpose. Afilu him harbe mimloi hayad, even if it's more than a handful, mutar little kulan to kivin shekinchu bohen huchnur kach. Since they've been used previously, then obviously that is their function, that is their status, and they're no longer muktzah. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkat and Hey, Ve'im nikar, mashma meloshen zeh, dim eina nikar. The implication is that if it's not nikar, that it's clear that they've been used for this purpose, af she'adur shikinech, but even though it's, you can see that it's been used for this, also likach memenu meloi hayad, im ein lo mokum kavur, then you can't take memenu meloi hayad, im ein lo mokum kavur, if you haven't got a fixed place for it. V'yesh mekinim bezed, kim she'adur shikinech by, have a nikar, but if you can see that it's been used previously for this, then it's considered nikar. Shenik chubai sifkat and vav hainu me'erev Shabbos. Umayri kishelo yichtan me'erev Shabbos beferish lakach. He didn't designate it specifically or explicitly. Dim yichtan, because if he did, afilu lekinech ben me'olam mutalach lis mashiyetze. Because if he did explicitly designate them for this purpose, then you can take as many as you want. Fuadin niyar chalak, and so too, if a person uses a black piece of paper, shemak b'dolov d'yeshbo mishum muktzah, there are those. We generally makbid on quality writing paper that is muktzah. Gam kein mahani yichud me'erev Shabbos. Yichud of that writing paper could be used, to designate it, and therefore is no longer muktzah. And there you can take as much as you want into the bathroom. Ve'im lo yichtan, if you didn't designate it, eina mutar lachnis lebeis hakisei she'eino kavua, rak kafi tzarka lepam zeh bavad. And if you didn't designate it, then the muktzah is only waived for the amount you need for this occasion. V'also the kreh hana b'Shabbos, you can't tear the paper on Shabbos. Or k'mavu lekam b'sim shin mem sifyud gimel ayin shal Mishnah Berurah. Okay, then mutar lachnisa ayin el b'sim gimel sifyud gimel yedalef Mishnah Berurah sham. Now, interestingly, in footnote number 4, he deals with a problem that many poskim deal with. What happens if you find yourself in the bathroom on Shabbos where there's no toilet paper, there's no Shabbos toilet paper, and you just got a roll of toilet paper? What to do? So says the footnote 4. That if a person tears toilet paper in order to wipe himself on Shabbos, then there is an issa of korea. You're tearing in order to make it to that size, because there's a tikkun. It's not a destructive form of korea, and therefore there's a chiyuv there. Where you cut a piece from one piece into two. And he needs it. But if you just cut one off the roll, it's no more prepared than it was beforehand, i.e. you're not taking one piece and dividing that one piece into two. You're just pulling off a piece from a roll, and the remaining piece is no more prepared than it was beforehand. And it's not roy l'shimesh because it's on a roll. It's not roy l'shimesh because it's not a piece. The point is that relegates it to a drabonon. It's not an isman HaTorah. because you've been misak in this piece. Rashi talking maybe according to Rashi it could be Nisan Torah. Now, our situation. You find yourself in a bathroom where there is no Shabbos toilet paper. You're allowed to use the long roll. You just throw it into the. Well, no, you just like relieve the roll and then wipe. And then you flush the chain, and then that will break the roll, that sort of disconnect the roll from the toilet paper. So in other words, you wipe, and then you continue to use and continue to pull the roll until you finished, and then you just flush the chain, and then it will just disconnect. That is the way you should do it. If it's just not shaykh, otherwise you are allowed to tear it b'shinui, because again you're doing, these are all drabonas, mishum kavod abrius, human dignity. These things are allowed. Okay, just for the next paragraph. And if for some reason you can't tear off with a shinui paper from the roll, and you therefore need to tear off pieces. So again, to tear it b'shinui in a way that it doesn't otherwise work, that would be okay. That you're allowed to. Okay. So in a situation where you find yourself without this Shabbos toilet paper, either to sort of just use the roll and just keep rolling, and then when you flush it just disconnects, or if you can't do that, then you just tear with a shinui, and because that would only be a drabonon. The whole thing, it could be that just pulling it off anyway from the toilet paper is itself a drabonon. It's not kareh deraisa, and certainly if you do it with a shinui, it's a drabonon. And mishum kavod abrius, that is allowed. Okay, back to the Ramah in Sif Aleph. Yesh Omrim, says the Ramah, Dafka b'chotze mutar l'taltal avonim. When can you take these avonim to the place where you're going to the Beit HaKisei? Dafka in a chotzer. V'yesh Omrim dafilu b'karmelis l'rishayachid namishar. Even from a karmelis, which is in Issa Hitzah midrabanon, to your chotzer, to your rishayachid, would be allowed. Dahanami ein araki sadrabanon, because that it's not an Issa deraisa of Hitzah. Umishum kavod abrius hitziruhu. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Ches v'yesh Omrim Tafilu Mekarmelis to v'chein Ika Rishus Rabim Didon, and our Rishus Rabim after the Harba Poskim ein a dinner Karmelis, according to many Poskim anyway it's not a deraisa, it's only got a dinner Karmelis Mikol Mokum ein lahakel, and therefore you should try and make sure that there is paper or there's stones, whatever is used before Shabbos. Okay, base. Says the Mechaba, Im yodu geshamim al ha'avonim. If rain comes down on the stones that you've designated on your roof or whatever it is, wherever it is in the field, and v'nitpu, and then they sort of the stones that you've designated sort of sink into the ground. In Rishum and Nika, if the ones that you designated it's clear which ones you've put aside, mutar litlon kedei lekanech. You're allowed to take them to be mekanech, to wipe yourself. Ve'ein b'zeh mishum soiseh v'lo mishum toichin. We're not worried you're being soiseh, the pile of bricks or stones that have now gone onto the ground, and there's no problem of toichin, of grinding like that. You're allowed to take those stones, even though rain has come down and they're sort of sunk into the ground, you're allowed to take them. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tes, Al ha'avonim, hainu shechnisa mitchil lekaneach bohen. You took them initially to use in the bathroom, and they sort of sunk a little bit into the ground. Nevertheless, you're allowed to take them. If rishum and nika hainu shenikarin lamayla min hakarka v'lo nitbu b'karka legamre. It's sort of evident that they haven't sunk into the ground fully. You can make out pretty much these are the stones that you brought before Shabbos. Soiseh v'lo mishum toichen. Or even if you brought them on Shabbos. There's no problem of soiseh or teichen. Even if it's on the ground in the chodzeh, it could be breaking. And you're breaking the floor in order to, by way of taking these stones up, you're breaking the floor somehow. Or you're crumbling the ground around it. That we're not worried about either of those things, and you're allowed to take the stones. There's no problem with Seisa and no problem with Teichin. Okay, let's just do one more. Gimel. If you've got some straw to be used for kinuach, and then there's some asovim grew on them. They're on the floor, and some grass grew on this straw that has been set aside for this purpose. Mutar lekanech, but you're still allowed to wipe yourself with it. And we're not worried about tzlisha, that you're sort of plucking it, you're reaping it from the ground. Because even if you are being toilish, it's Dovashen Mischaven, which reduces it to Drabonon, and Mishum Kavod Abrias, we allow you to do it. Sif Kotten Gimel, Mutzele Kanech Bay, Midasosum Mashma, Afilim Munach al Haaretz Mutelitla. Even if this straw is on the ground, and therefore it could be a Shalom Mechubel Karka, we still allow you to take it. The af va'af the yesh bezel kol ponim lekula alma isa tzlisha midrabanon. We're talking tzlisha drabanon. The mechzik katelish. It looks like teilish. You're taking it up from the ground. There's grass on it. Hacha mishum kavod abrias legazer. Because of kavod abrias, we're not worried. Va'ayin b'mashe nichtav lekam b'simin shin lamavav sifhei v'sifches b'mishta bura u'bihalacha. V'loy chashinon. We're not worried of tzlisha. Even if there is tlisha midaraisa, chudlekam b'simin shin lamvav sifhei, afilu hachi lo chashin she'anitlash kivin she'ena mischavin lezeh v'lav psik reishu. We're not particularly worried about it, because even if it is connected somewhat to the ground, and therefore it is a shayla tzlisha deraisa, this is dovashen mischaven, is not psik reisha, and therefore it's okay. If you look at 11, he says that's v'chein. If you're worried, v'chein lekanech es asma a yodov lebenai tissue dak. You wipe your hands, you dry your hands with a tissue, and you're worried it might tear. Or even if you use it for kinuach, shemotzu shenikra hashimish bay. Some of these tissues are very thin. Das hagonim listen karelitz. Shemuta. We're not worried if you might come to tear it. It's not guaranteed that the paper is going to break. You didn't intend it. And certainly you're using it in a destructive way. You're going to chuck it out afterwards. That makes it even better. Okay. But you've got other tzirufim as well. If you're sure, then maybe take two at a time or something like that, where you use the way that it's not guaranteed to rib. Beseda. Okay.